I didn't expect a Mother's Day message from my mother. That probably sounds terrible, but by that point in my life, our relationship had settled into something polite and distant. We spoke on holidays, we exchanged carefully measured updates, we avoided anything that might become a fight. So when my phone buzzed that Sunday morning, I opened it expecting a generic greeting. Instead, I found a PDF. The title read, Cost of Raising a Disappointment. Below it was a figure $347,000. For a moment, I thought it was some kind of scam. Then I saw the family group chat, 48 relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, in-laws, everyone. My mother had uploaded the document and added a single message. Since today is Mother's Day, I think it's time everyone understood what sacrifice really looks like. The PDF listed expenses from my childhood through adulthood, school supplies, medical bills, food, clothing, rent. Transportation, every ordinary cost of raising a child had been converted into a debt. Next to the total was my name. People started responding almost immediately. Some thought it was funny. Others posted laughing emojis. One uncle wrote, "Looks like you owe your mother interest." Another added, "Kids never understand what parents give up." I sat staring at my screen. The strange thing wasn't the embarrassment, it was the familiarity. My mother had spent years treating love like a transaction. Every favor came with a reminder, every gift became evidence, every sacrifice was eventually presented as a bill. She had just never done it in front of 47 other people before. I typed half a dozen responses, deleted all of them. The urge to defend myself was strong, but experience had taught me something. Arguments only gave her a larger stage. I closed the chat and spent the afternoon trying to ignore it. Then something kept bothering me, the invoice, not the cruelty of it, the details. Certain dates looked wrong. Some expenses didn't make sense. There were costs assigned to years when I hadn't even lived at home. I'm supposedly paid by her that I distinctly remembered being covered by someone else. I opened the PDF again. Then I opened old folders stored on my computer. The search wasn't driven by revenge. At first, it was almost compulsive. I needed to know whether my memory was failing or hers. Hora's past talks accumulated, receipts, letters, scanned records, old photographs, and then I found something. A photograph taken 22 years earlier. At first glance, it seemed completely ordinary. My grandmother stood in a lawyer's office. My mother stood beside her. I was a child, barely visible in the background. The picture itself wasn't important. What mattered was the date. Because that date matched one of the largest expenses on my mother's invoice, an expense she claimed had nearly ruined her financially. I remembered something Grandma had once mentioned years ago, something nobody paid attention to. I kept digging. Eventually, I found supporting paperwork, then more paperwork. And suddenly, the entire story unraveled. The financial hardship my mother had built her reputation around wasn't actually hers. Grandma had paid for most of it. Not partially, mostly. For decades, my mother had allowed people to believe she had carried burdens she never actually carried alone. I stared at the documents for a long time. I wasn't excited. I wasn't angry. Mostly, I felt tired. The family had spent years repeating a story that wasn't true, and I had spent years being judged against it. That evening, the group chat was still active. People were still making jokes. My mother was accepting sympathy, adding details, expanding the narrative. So I uploaded one thing, the photograph, nothing else, no explanation, no accusation, no caption, just the image. Then I turned my phone off. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of notifications. The group chat had exploded overnight. People were asking questions. Someone had recognized the lawyer's office. Another relative remembered attending a meeting around the same time. Someone else found documents from an estate matter years earlier. The photograph had become a thread. People started pulling. And once they started pulling, everything began coming loose. By noon, relatives were comparing records privately. Stories no longer matched. Timelines didn't match. Claim didn't match. Years of assumptions were suddenly under examination. Then came the moment nobody could argue with. The attorney whose office appeared in the photograph had long since retired, but the legal files still existed. A representative handling archived records confirmed the documentation. The records were authentic. The financial contributions had been documented. The dates were documented. The source of funds was documented. The story my mother had been telling for years simply wasn't supported by the record. That was the moment control shifted. Not because anyone humiliated her, not because anyone attacked her, because facts replaced narrative. By evening, relatives weren't defending me. They were questioning her. There was a difference. One by one, people stopped responding to her messages. Then they started blocking her. By the next morning, 47 relatives had cut contact. 47, all except one, Grandma. When I heard that, I assumed she was protecting her daughter. Despite everything, that seemed natural. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 days later, Grandma called me. She was 86. Her voice sounded calm, almost too calm. "I fixed something," she said. "What do you mean?" "I corrected a mistake I made years ago." That was all she would say. A week later, I learned what she meant years earlier. Grandma had created arrangements regarding family assets, responsibilities, and future administration of certain properties. Those arrangements had remained largely unchanged because she believed keeping peace was more important than confronting uncomfortable truths. After the Mother's Day incident, she changed them. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, out of certainty. For the first time in decades, she no longer trusted my mother's judgment. The changes were legal, documented, final, and impossible to manipulate through family pressure. That was what Grandma did, not something loud, something permanent. Ironically, It wasn't the financial consequence that shook the family, it was what the decision represented. Grandma had spent her entire life avoiding conflict. The fact that she acted at all told everyone everything they needed to know. Months later, people still ask whether I felt victorious. I never know how to answer. My mother lost credibility, the family fractured, relationships changed, some may never recover. None of that feels like winning. What I gained wasn't revenge. It was freedom from a role I never chose. For years I had been the family disappointment, the cautionary tale, the child who supposedly took more than he gave. A single photograph didn't change the past, but it revealed who had been rewriting it. And once everyone saw that, silence became impossible. The strange part is that I still keep the photograph, not because it proved I was right, because it reminds me how fragile loyalty becomes when it depends on a story that can't survive the truth.